Halfway through 2024, I made a video talking about the best games of the year, in my opinion, that had come out by that point. This is the sequel to that video, so make sure to check that one out if you're curious what the year was looking like when it was still raw and doughy. At this point, however, I gotta say that 2024 has been another great year for video games. Perfectly baked, the knife comes out cleanly, no uncooked starfields making the whole year smell like an unbathed Todd Howard, all that good stuff. It was almost as good as 2023, which was already an exceptional year, ignoring Starfield, compared to the past. There are just so many different indie and AAA developers screwing around with their little computers and wearing their little programmer socks, making games now. It's crazy. Even AA is making a comeback, with THQ Nordic becoming an absolute powerhouse, pumping out games left and right. The market is certainly a bit oversaturated, and it's basically impossible to keep up with everything that comes out. Because of this, there were a lot of games that I thought deserved to be on the list, but didn't quite make the cut. There were some that I know are very good, but I just didn't play enough of. Those games include Fast Food Simulator, Path of Exile 2, and Black Myth Wukong. There are some games that were incredible, but they are re-released games from past years. Well, this isn't disqualifying. If a game is a remaster or a remake of any kind of re-release at all, it does lose a lot of points for me. Those games from this year are Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. And lastly, of course, there are the sad and sorry games that just weren't quite as good as the others on the list. I can only fit 10 slots, unfortunately. Yes, you should feel bad for them. They're all basically little children in strollers, and I took their lollipops from them. Those games are Halls of Torment, TCG Card Shop Simulator, Core Keeper, Workers and Resources Soviet Republic, Chained Together, Hades 2, Vellum, Dragon's Dogma 2, Millennia, Ultros, Last Epoch, Moonbreaker, and The Universum. Now, let's get into the top 10. Kicking off our list is Palworld, the less than ethical open world Pokemon-like survival craft game where you can build, battle, and befriend adorable pals, or turn them into cogs in your factory if you're feeling a little sadistic. Nintendo is currently suing the developers of this game for their ball catching mechanic because Nintendo hates fun. So make sure you play this while it continues to be available, and let's hope that it will be available forever. There's lots of fun to be had here in Palworld, especially with your friends. There's an expansive open world with lots of pals to collect. There's good base building mechanics, bosses, dungeons, and exciting battles to be had. It doesn't feel like this game came out this year. It seems like it was last year, but yes, in fact, it came out in January. It was an absolute blast when it came out, and it still is, and I would highly recommend you check out Palworld if you haven't played it yet, especially with friends. Coming in at number 9 is Flintlock Siege of Dawn. This action RPG Souls-like has you battling gods and monsters with a mix of melee combat, firearms, and magic. The combat is intricate, even for a Souls-like. Depending on the enemy, you will need to use a mix of all of your abilities, and there are lots of different enemy types and lots of different abilities. It does, however, have a difficulty setting if you're a little new player. You can parry with your melee weapon or handgun. There is a two-handed musket and a one-handed musket, as well as plenty of melee weapons and armor. It has phenomenal graphics and art design. You'll explore a massive world with many diverse areas. The world building is something completely unique to itself. There's really nothing else like it. I know that there have been an overabundance of Souls-likes released recently, but this one stands out among the crowd. Flintlock Siege of Dawn is definitely worth checking out. At number 8, we have Mecha Bellum. This strategic auto-battler puts you in command of massive mechs in arena-style combat. Think of it as chess, but with giant robots, laser cannons, and way more arson. A checkmate is an actual explosion. There are many different mechs to choose from, and each have a list of other mechs that are weak or strong against them. Think Pokemon types, or an overly complicated version of rock, paper, scissors. Every turn, you have the choice between buying one-time use equipment, another unit unit, unlocking a new unit, or upgrading a unit on the field. This to say that the game has a great mix of long-term strategy throughout each game and short-term tactics turn to turn. This game was in early access for a long time, but finally this year it was released completely. Mecha Bellum is a fantastic game, especially for people who enjoy strategy games. If that all sounds good to you, I would have to recommend you play this one. In the 7th spot, we have V Rising. V Rising is an isometric survivalcraft game where players step into the role of a newly awakened vampire in a world that was taken over by humans a long time ago. With a mission to rebuild the vampire empire that once existed, you'll start off incredibly weak while feeding on rats to survive and avoiding the many enemies that will instantly kill you. After a while, you'll be able to take on stronger and stronger enemies until you can take on big bosses and really entire towns full of humans. The game offers both single player and multiplayer modes where you can team up with your friends or betray them in true vampire fashion. A key feature is the ability to build and customize your own evil vampire castle in the woods. With its atmospheric visuals, fast-paced combat, and blend of survival and RPG mechanics, V Rising is appealing to dark fantasy RPG fans and survivalcraft fans alike. I had a lot of fun with this game with some friends of mine earlier in the year, and I would recommend this solo or with a group if any of it sounds good to you.
From my veins, I rejuvenate.
In 6th place, we have Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is a cooperative third-person shooter where everybody in the world that's playing the game is trying to fight off two alien threats attacking Earth from both sides. You and your squad play as the titular Helldivers, and you'll work with thousands of other Helldivers to recapture planets that are held by the Terminids, which are giant bugs, or the Automatons, which are robots. The gameplay requires teamwork, precision, and strategy, with each mission requiring players to coordinate and adapt to shifting challenges. The gameplay features high-stakes combat with a variety of weapons, gear, and abilities, all designed to give you plenty of tactical options in the field. Unlike many other cooperative shooters, Helldivers 2 is known for its unforgiving mechanics, where friendly fire is a feature and not an option. This means that you can't just call down airstrikes and Moabs willy-nilly. Your random flamethrower spraying will kill all of your teammates and lose you all the mission, so try to avoid that. Graphically, the game offers a polished, immersive experience with large, detailed environments and aliens, from sprawling deserts to lush jungles that look so realistic you'll need to keep your grandpa away or it'll trigger his PTSD. Every mission feels different. Helldivers 2 stands out for its focus on cooperation and its ability to make every mission feel like complete chaos and give you victories that feel earned. This is another game that I would highly recommend everybody play once, at least once, with a group of friends. Halfway through the list at number 5 is Witchfire. Witchfire is a dark fantasy, first-person, kind of Souls-like shooter that combines fast-paced gunplay with magic spells. The game places you into a world that you don't know much about at first. As you gain more Gnosis, a skill that you can level up, a few things will happen. Firstly, you'll gain more access to things to progress the story, like new areas and levels. You'll also gain more insight into the levels and uncover more secrets about the world. However, the game also gets more difficult the more Gnosis is leveled up. Much like real life, the more knowledge and insight you have, the more difficult it gets. This means that you get to balance the difficulty to your liking. If you choose to level up Gnosis, the game progresses and gets harder, or you can level up the other abilities which make the game easier. If you want an easier time in the game, it will simply take you longer to play through. The combat in Witchfire is a standout feature. It's an FPS with spellcasting too. You can use a variety of weapons from revolvers to shotguns to sniper rifles, while simultaneously using a bunch of different magical abilities. This mix of ranged weapons and spells creates some very interesting gameplay that requires skill and experimentation. The game is set in a grim, dark fantasy world that feels mysterious and makes you want to explore and learn more. Just like in Souls games, when you die, your Witchfire
appreciate it!
The equivalent of XP points or souls is left wherever you died, so you'll need to go back into the level to fish them out if you die before escaping. The game also has a small amount of procedural generation in each level, which ensures that no two runs are exactly the same, keeping the gameplay fresh and unpredictable. Witchfire is a great game for anyone who enjoys intense, skill-based combat set in a detailed, dark fantasy world. If you like Souls-likes and first-person shooters like I do, you'll definitely enjoy Witchfire too. At number 4 is Manor Lords. Manor Lords was released in early access this year, and if it was a full release with everything they want to implement, it would be in my number 1 spot, and it wouldn't even be close. It is a medieval strategy game that combines deep city building mechanics with large-scale tactical battles. The game emphasizes authenticity in its depiction of medieval life, blending realism, city building, and RTS mechanics into an insanely addictive experience. Seriously, I've put more time into this game than any of the others on the list by far. It is very easy to lose time into this game without realizing it. You take on the role of a lord tasked with developing and managing a medieval settlement. This involves balancing resources, constructing buildings, ensuring the well-being of the population, and building up a sustainable economy. The building system is freeform, allowing you to design your settlements organically rather than adhering to any pre-made layouts, making each town completely unique. The game incorporates seasonal changes, trade systems, and social hierarchies, forcing you to adapt to the evolving needs of the people. You'll need to prevent starvation during winter, gain enough wealth to pay rent to your king, and prevent bandits from attacking your towns and stealing your resources. There are also other lords that you compete with for regions on the map. Potentially, you will need to go to war with them too. The combat system includes large-scale battles inspired by historical warfare. You'll control armies in real time, utilizing formations, terrain, and tactics to win. Soldiers' morale, stamina, and positioning are important as well, which makes for an incredibly deep combat experience. The game's visuals and mechanics are heavily influenced by medieval Europe, from the architecture to the clothing and tools. It feels authentic in its representation of the time period. Ambient details such as changing weather and the daily routines of villagers create a living, breathing world that you essentially get to create from the ground up. The game allows for a lot of strategic freedom. There are many different ways to play the game, whether you focus on building a thriving economic hub, forging alliances, or expanding your territory through conquest. The game allows you to play however you feel like playing, while still being very challenging. The only reason why this game isn't number 1 is because it's missing things. You can tell it isn't quite done. The games and resource extraction feel like they need some more upgrades, or more to the tech tree, if you know what I mean. For example, there aren't any stone walls yet, only wooden ones. Lots of things like that, which they will certainly be adding in the future, but while the game isn't quite finished, I have to say that it's still incredible as is. If you like strategy games, city builders, RTSs, or the like, this is an absolute must-play. Breaking into the top 3 is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. The first thing I want to talk about with this game is the movement. You can now sprint and dive in all 4 directions. This doesn't sound like much, but compared to older Call of Duties, it makes the movement feel much more dynamic. Of course, the gunplay, as always, is just as good as any other COD game. Call of Duty has been doing this for a long time now, so you know the gunplay is as fine-tuned as always. And just as all the rest of the games in the Black Ops sub-series, Black Ops 6 is kind of 3 games in one, so I'll tackle them all separately. Firstly, we have the campaign. I didn't know Call of Duty had it in them, but this was my favorite campaign since Black Ops 1. It's now in my top 3 favorite Call of Duty campaigns of all time. It's got a great storyline that gets crazy. I mean, like, I just did a whole bunch of LSD levels of crazy. Plus, we're going back to following events as they unfold in history. It takes place during the Desert Storm era, the 90s and early 2000s time frame, but it has a fictional conspiracy theory-esque story that follows alongside the real history. It really went back to the roots of the series, and it feels a lot more similar to the first two Black Ops games. On top of that, most of the levels allow you to choose to be stealthy or to run and gun through. Each gameplay style is completely different and allows you to choose whichever way you want to go through the game. The campaign was an absolute hit. The multiplayer is also quite good though. They went back to basics with this one. The emphasis was on customization. There's lots of camos and attachments. Other than the movement changes, this just feels like classic Call of Duty from 10 plus years ago in the best way possible. Finally, moving on to the zombies, they went in a completely different direction with this game mode. From World at War to Black Ops 4, the zombies just kept adding more and more crazy stuff to do in order to outdo the last game. In Black Ops 6, it's completely different. There are small tasks to do throughout the map and to unlock stuff, but most of the upgrades and guns are simply unlocked by opening doors. The challenge comes from the boss zombies that spawn in regularly throughout the rounds. It's a more simplified experience than what we've seen in the past, but it's also some of the most fast-paced zombies as well. Although I still prefer the Golden Age World at War to Black Ops 2 era of zombies, I think BO6 did a great job and the new direction was a great choice. In all, I had a lot of fun with Black Ops 6, and as someone who hasn't been a big fan of Call of Duty for over a decade really, this game really hit the nail on the head. I would highly recommend this one. Taking the runner-up spot is Marvel Rivals. For years, I've been looking for a more modern version of Power Stone for the Dreamcast. This is exactly that, except combined with Overwatch during its prime. I never played Overwatch during its prime, so this is based on what others have said. But either way, Marvel Rivals is a third-person 6v6 online multiplayer fighting game where you pick from a roster of Marvel characters and try to compete against another team of 6. There are support, tank, and DPS characters. You'll want to choose the class based on what will help your team the most. Ideally, you would want at least one of each class. The support typically heals or provides some kind of indirect benefit to the team. The tank absorbs most of the damage coming from the other team, and the DPS does the majority of the damage. My personal favorite character that I play the most is Moon Knight because his attacks bounce between any enemies that are close to each other. So when they're all grouped up, feeling safe behind their tank, their health suddenly drains to 0. Each character is completely unique, and you can spend a lot of time figuring out how to play as each of them. The game really makes you feel powerful no matter which character you're playing. There are a couple of overpowered characters at the moment, like Penny Parker and Punisher, but the game is overall quite well balanced. The game has very high highs and very low lows. It feels insane whenever you're winning and equally as insane whenever you're losing. This has been the game that I hop on almost every day to play a match or two since it came out. There's lots of skins, emotes, and other cosmetic items that keep you wanting to unlock more. If you like high-octane competitive games, or fighting games, or superheroes, or Overwatch, or really having fun in general, you've got to check this one out for sure.
Vengeance is served.
And at the top of our list, in the number 1 spot, drumroll please, just kidding, Astrobot. When I first got my PS5 a few years ago, the first thing I did was play through all of Astro's Playroom, the game that comes pre-installed onto every PS5, and I 100%ed it. I collected every single thing there was to collect. This sounds impressive until you realize how small Astro's Playroom really is. This feat really only took me about a week, which is a shame because Astro's Playroom felt like such a perfect platformer. The controls were tight, the secrets were plenty, the combat was fun, and not to mention the absolutely amazing haptic feedback from the PS5 controller. I was left wanting more, much more. Finally, this year, along comes Astrobot, the sequel, kind of, to Astro's Playroom. More like a full version of it in reality. Everything that Astro's Playroom did right, Astrobot did too, except it has more to collect and plenty more levels to play through. Let's talk about each thing that I love about this game. Firstly, there's the music. It's upbeat, it's catchy, and it's regularly stuck in my head. The graphics are vibrant and detailed, the platforming is tight, and so is the combat. The boss fights are fun, Every level is completely different from the last. Everything just feels handcrafted and intentional in this game. Overall, it's as polished as a mainline Nintendo game like Mario or Zelda, which is impressive. The cherry on top is the haptic feedback. They did a great job of making things happening in the game feel exactly like they should in your hands with the haptic feedback motors on the controller. It's a hard thing to describe unless you experience it, but the haptic feedback really is something else. It's light years ahead of simply having rumble. On top of all that is the collectathon aspect of the game. There are a number of things to collect in each level. Many of these things are hidden and will require revisiting levels and searching for something you can destroy or a puzzle to solve in order to unlock a secret area to find the secret item. It makes me want to 100% this one too. The game won Game of the Year at the Game Awards like a month ago, I think, and it is completely without a doubt 100% deserved. A lot of people haven't played this because it's exclusive to the PS5, which I think is also why a lot of people are complaining about its pick as the #1 game of the year. But if you ever get an opportunity, this game is certainly worth playing, and I believe it will go down as one of the greatest platformers of all time. The spot for best game of 2024 has to go to Astrobot. And with that, that's the end of the video. Make sure you let me know down below what your favorite games of the year were, and make sure, of course, you do all that stupid stuff like liking and subscribing and hitting the notification bell. What else do YouTubers say? I don't know. Whatever it is, I missed it, I guess. Bye-bye. See ya. Have fun. Good luck. Be safe. Bye-bye.